first and foremost, I just would like to ask you for a reaction to the latest comments from the United States President Donald Trump, saying just moments ago that the ceasefire in the Middle East is now in effect. And he's saying, please do not violate it. So I just would like to ask you for a reaction to that.
Good morning to you. It's not easy to understand every day the single decisions of President Trump. But of course, the idea of a ceasefire is a very good thing. And we hope finally we could arrive to ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and at the same time, finally to try to make an agreement, a comprehensive agreement in the region. So I think it's a good news, but the real problem for geopolitics today is every day there is a different thing. And it's interesting, in my opinion, to see how the markets usually now are very calm because they understood that we live in a very chaotic time. So if you ask me, what is the comment? Good. It's a good step. But we will see if that will be a ceasefire of a peace agreement. And that is not clear now.
Of course, the situation still remains very delicate. But I would like to also get a broader comment from you in terms of how do you see the Italian and the European position when it comes to what's going on in the Middle East?
My opinion is that Europe have to wake up, not only for Middle East, not only for Iran, not only for single dossier issue. Europe was one of the most beautiful ideas in the last century. But today, that is my humble opinion, we live in an European over-regulated and with a bureaucratic leadership and not a visionary leadership. In this world of chaos, Europe have to play a role only if we'll be able to change the last year's strategy to follow day by day without a vision and try to have a diplomatic vision, of course, for Middle East, of course, for Ukraine, of course, for every single geopolitical issue, but at the same time, try to invest more in politics and less in bureaucracy, because today the risk for Europe is to be spectator, while the others players have a very important and big role.
Mr. Renzi, yes. I apologize for interrupting, but I would like to pick up on that point. You're suggesting that there's a risk that Europe is just a spectator, but I would like to challenge you on that. Europe already seems to be a spectator. President Trump already said when it comes to the Middle East that Europe cannot help with what's going on.
Of course, there is a very complicated situation because our best ally, United States of America, and POTUS, President of the United States of America, attacked us every day, every week, every month. He used to say in Iran, I don't believe in the European efforts. He said the same thing, Europe attacked us. And please remember, now, in this moment, there is not an agreement about tariffs. And that is a tragedy because Europe grew up with the idea we are the best. Our alliance is, of course, with the United States of America. So we have a problem, a challenge from the decision of White House. But exactly for that, we have to wake up and try to play a role as Europeans, independently from the statement of every day of President Trump. Also because President Trump changes statement every day. So Europe think, and it's very important that the European Council tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, it will be very important that Europe have a strategy for economy, for geopolitics, for innovation. You know what is the quote? Europe is the problem because America invent, China copies, and Europe regulates. So we have to wake up and come back to have a very important role as Europeans. I believe in that.
Let's see indeed what will happen at that European summit as well later this week. But Mr. Renzi, I would like to also get your thoughts on the NATO summit happening before the European Council. We witnessed Donald Trump leaving the G7 meeting earlier than expected. Do you think he is going to do the same at the NATO summit? Is there a risk there?
Yes. I think White House announced they will arrive later. I don't know what is the agenda, the schedule, but for sure, Donald Trump gave a message of considering that type of events very boring and not good for him. I was at the NATO summit in the Wales when President Obama with Prime Minister Cameron and the other leaders decided in 2014 to increase the investment in defense from 1.2% to 2%. And we achieved the result because in Wales, 2014, we decided in 10 years we will arrive to 2%. And now we are here. What is the problem? Independently from the decision of Trump, President Trump, you usually try to give this message for communication. He used the very aggressive campaign of communication against European partners. I think it's important to spend this money not in the bureaucratic way. Americans show us what happened with the investment in defense, internet, laser, maps around the world. I think if we invest in military issues, but with a very dual use, so with a very important civil utilization, we can give a message the investment in defense are good also for the day-by-day life of the people. That is the priority, independently from Trump's ideas.
We have heard U.S. officials, however, saying that the 10-year timeline here to reach the 5% is simply too slow. I would like to understand from an Italian perspective whether Rome is actually potentially jealous of Spain, that it perhaps managed to negotiate an opt-out from the 5%.
Yesterday, Prime Minister Meloni in Camera dei Deputati, in the Congress, in the Parliament, announced officially the Italian government will maintain the commitment of NATO, and so we will arrive to the same level of the other 3.5% in one sector, 1.5% in the other 5% of total. So Italy is involved with NATO. I'm not a supporter of Prime Minister Meloni, but when we discuss about Italy around the world, we have only one country. And I was Prime Minister when we signed 2% and we achieved that. Now Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, she's the Prime Minister. She will sign the agreement and will arrive to that result because we are a very serious country. So don't believe to the traditional propaganda against Italy. Italy could change. No. Italy is committed. Italy is one very pillar of NATO. The only problem is if NATO will be able to understand now we live in a different time. We have to come back to have a very important role in military, but also to try to play a role in diplomacy. We lost a lot of opportunities in Ukraine, in Middle East, because we haven't diplomatic policy. So Europe have to come back to have a diplomatic role, not as today.
And so just to conclude on that point, do you think that therefore NATO countries should actually be even more ambitious and agree to potentially 5% but earlier rather than the 10-year timeline?
I think the problem for NATO today, frankly speaking, sorry if I'm very brutal and direct, is what is NATO today? Because before the Russian invasion in Ukraine, a lot of leaders, remember President Macron, used this expression that NATO is over. And after Russian invasion, NATO tried to come back a new role. But today we have tensions with the United States, troubles inside. So it's important to invest in NATO, and I think 10 years is a good timing. So we don't need an escalation. But at the same time, what is the vision for the new years? That is the problem. And I think we need more politics and less bureaucracy in the leadership of Europe and NATO. That is my wish and my expectation.